Thank you, students. Once again, in this video exercise or record, I will be focusing on the topic called limiting factor, as I have highlighted or written on top with a red. Now, as usual, I will prefer that I begin by reading what we are required to do before I read the information provided to us. We are required to calculate the shortfall or the bottleneck or the limiting factor in machine hours. They already state to us that machine hours is the limiting factor. Then after that, we are to determine the best production plan, meaning determining the number of units in this case, assuming that the toy company wishes to maximize the profit. So we need to determine the number of units that will maximize the profit. Take note of the word maximize profit. Then after, we will be required to calculate the maximum profit that will be achieved from the production mix in part B above. So that is what we have at the back of our minds, and now we must read the information that is given on our disposal. Exercise 5 says Little Toy Company manufactures 4 products. The first one, it is the wooden trucks, tractors, trains, and cars. The company cannot keep up with the demand, and the demand for the product in units is 1,000, 1.2, 1.4 units, and 800 units. Remember, these are the units that the company, these are the units that are in demand. So now we are hearing that the company cannot keep up with this demand because of some limitations. Then now let us read further and search what are these limitations are. Then it further says that the company has a specialized cutting machine that is not coping with the cutting level of the work, and this machine can work for only 6,800 hours. So these are the available hours. These hours are the available hours. Now, if these are the available hours, we then need to compare the available hours with the required hours. So available hours is 6,800, meaning we are limited to use this number of hours in order for us to manufacture all the units that are required to be manufactured for the 4 products that we are producing. The required hours for each unit of the products are as follows. So now these are the required for each unit, meaning the hours required to complete 1 unit. It takes 2 hours to complete 1 unit of a truck, and it takes 2.2 hours to complete 1 unit of a tractor, and it takes 1.4 hours to complete 1 unit of a train, and it takes 2.1 hours to complete 1 unit of a car. Then now for us to know the total required hours, we say the hours per unit, multiply that by the units, the hours per unit, multiply this by the units, and the hours per unit multiply by that, and this one multiplied by that. So this will give us the required hours, meaning the number of hours that we need in order to manufacture according to our demand, and we compare that with the available hours. So now, meaning we will have to be continuously multiplying and saying 1,000 times this by 2, meaning the company require 2,000 hours to complete 1,000 units of trucks, and 1,200 times this by 2.2. This gives us 2,640 hours, and 1,400 times this by 1.4. It is 1,960 hours. Then after, we have 800, multiply this by 2.1, and this will give us 1,680 hours. So now this will be the total required hours, plus 1,960 plus 2,640 plus 2,000 hours. I'm just calculating the total for all of them. 2,000 plus 2,640 plus 1,960 plus 1,680. So this gives us a total of 8,280 hours. These are the required hours to manufacture the necessary up to the necessary demand. But what is available is less than what is required. So the difference becomes what you call the shortfall. And the shortfall is the requirement, the first requirement. So if you say minus what is available, then we get to say that 1,480 hours is the shortfall. 1,480 hours is already the shortfall. Now let us proceed on that same note, though we did answer number 1, but to read further. We are then now given the information which says the accountant has prepared the schedule below showing the profitability of each product. We are given the details for the 4 products that the company is selling, and we have the selling price per unit for each of the 4 products. Then after we have the cost per unit, which is made of direct material, direct labor, variable overheads, variable selling cost, fixed overheads, and fixed administrative cost. So we have all this cost given to us, and the minute we have this, then after we can be able to determine our profit. That is why now, after adding all the cost up to here, that will give you the total of 98 rand, and here it will be 115, here 119, here 110, which is the total of all the costs. The total of all the costs, it comes up to that one amount. So now that we already know our figures, we can say selling price minus cost per unit. That will give us profit per unit that we see here in the below. We said selling price minus the cost per unit. That is where this profit per unit is coming from. Now that has been clarified enough, and it's very crucial to note that and be mindful that this is a minus. We minus our cost per unit from our selling price in order to get to the profit for the period. Then after that can also be called gross profit per unit. The total fixed administrative, it's not gross profit, just profit per unit, not gross profit. The total fixed administrative and fixed overheads are 25,000 and 50,000 respectively. So now these are the total fixed cost, and we are required to calculate the shortfall, of which we already know that the shortfall is 1,480 hours. Remember, when you're calculating the shortfall, we don't need to know anything about the cost and the selling price. This won't be necessary now when we are calculating the shortfall, and you have already seen that above. So in response to the first question, then now we are calculating the shortfall, and we know that the shortfall, we start with the available, the required hours, then we end with the available hours. We have the required hours, and we have the 4 products, which is trucks, then we have tractors, then we have trains, then after we have cars. Let me just confirm the order. Trucks, tractors, trains, and cars. What are the hours that are required for each? It is the number of units that we have, multiply that by the required hours per unit, or the hours it takes to complete 1 unit. And you can see that is 2,000, 2,640, 1,960, and 1,680. Then our trucks is 1,000 units. Multiply this by the number of hours, which is 2 hours. The number of hours it takes to complete 1 unit, and this gives us 2,000 hours that are required to complete 1,000 units. Then the next step is to say the tractors, it is 1.2 units. Multiply this by 2.2 hours, which is the required hours to complete 1 unit. Then we have 1,200, just to confirm that, 1,200 times that by 2.2, times this by 2.2. Then we check how much do we have. 2.2 times this by 1,200. It gives us 2,640 hours. For the trains, we need to know how many units are required. The units that are required for the trains is 1.4. The train we require to manufacture 1.4 units, and it takes 1.4 hours to complete 1 unit. So we say 1.4 times this by 1.4 hours. 1,400 units times by 1.4 hours. So we have 1,400 units times this by 1.4 hours. 1,400 times 1.4 hours. It gives us 1,960. Then after we have the cars, and the cars, we want to manufacture 800 cars, and it takes 2.1 hours to complete 1 car. So we say 800 times this by 2.1, 800 multiply this by 2.1, we get 1,680. And we add all the required hours, plus 1,960, plus 2,640, plus 2,000. This gives us the required hours as 8,280. These are the hours that are required to manufacture the required demand or the needed demand. But if this is what is required hours, then the question is, what is available? Is what is available equal to what is required? So now let us say available hours. Available hours are normally given. And in this case, our available hours were 6,800, meaning the hours that the machine could manufacture. These are the hours that are available, meaning we can't manufacture or we can't use more than 6.8 machine hours currently with the current capacity or the available machine. So now we are comparing the required hours with the available hours. And by doing so, we will be able to determine if is there any shortfall. And we can see that what is required is less than what is available. So now meaning the difference between the two becomes what you call a shortfall or a limiting factor. So if you want, you can say the minus. Therefore, now we have 1,480 hours of a shortfall. So this is what you call the shortfall. And this is exactly what we were required to calculate. It is 1,480 machine hours. That is the shortfall. So the minute now you have calculated the shortfall, the second step now will be to then strike what we or calculate what we call the ranking, where you rank the products, because we have identified that you can't manufacture all the units that you want to manufacture because the hours that are available are less than what is required. And the question is, which product must be manufactured and which product must not be manufactured in terms of all the units because of the limited time. So that will be based on the contribution per limiting factor, which is the second requirement that we are now responding to. So now the second requirement was to then determine the production run or the production plan, assuming the toy company wishes to maximize profit. We need the one that will maximize our profit. So now what do? We have to calculate our contribution per limiting factor. And I want to highlight the fact that it is contribution per limiting factor. What is our limiting factor? Our limiting factor is machine hours. So now when I'm saying per limiting factor, you'll see that when I'm doing it with you. So we start with the trucks, then we have the tractors, we have the trains, and the last one is the cars. Then we know that contribution starts with the selling price per unit, and our selling prices were given to us, and those selling prices are 120, 150, 140, and 30. They are the selling prices that we have: 120, 150, 140, and 130. We have 120, 150, 140, and 130. Then we need to less variable cost, and variable cost, you can write all of them individual, or you can just write one amount. Preferably list all of them as individuals. Our variable costs are made of direct material, direct labor, variable overheads, and variable selling cost, of which this will be their total. This will be their total, and this will be their total, excluding the fixed part. So meaning we only end here with regards to variable cost. So our variable cost, material, labor, variable overheads, and variable selling and admin. As I said to you that if you want, you can just take the total and add all the figures and only have one amount, where you can say 30 plus 12 plus 14 plus 12, that will be 68. So I can have my 68 rands there. Then we go to the second one, 25 plus 18 plus 15 plus 15. That is the second one. 25, 18, 15, and 15. This gives us 73. Then I will still go to the total part. Then we have 35 plus 20 plus 15 plus 14. That will be 84. For the trains, it will be 84. And the last product in terms of the variable cost will be 20 plus 19 plus 15, in fact, plus 13, 67. Just confirm that is 20 plus 15 plus 19 plus 13. That is a total of 67 rands for the cars. Remember, these variable costs are made of direct material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overheads, and variable selling cost. So please list all of them individual. Just because of saving time for me, I'm not going to list all of them. So please list all of them, then their total will add up to the amount that I have shown you. So now let me proceed on that same note, then I'll erase, but make sure you list as I did show you in terms of the details. So now selling price minus variable cost will give me what we call the contribution. Minus 130. This is a total of 63. Then we have 84 minus 140. This is 56. 150 minus 73. This is 77. And 120 minus 68. I get 52. So these are the rankings according, or this is the contribution per unit. So this will be contribution per unit. Now we don't do rankings according to the contribution per unit, but we do our rankings according to the contribution per limiting factor. Just want to highlight that I said contribution per limiting factor. And this is not a contribution per limiting factor, but it's a contribution per unit. Then the question is, how do we get to the contribution per limiting factor? We divide by limiting factor per unit. Divide by limiting factor per unit. Our limiting factor is machine hours, so meaning I need to know the machine hours per unit. So hence I'm saying divide by the limiting factor per unit. So now I have to search for my limiting factor per unit, which is machine hours per unit. Remember, machine hours per unit, it is 2 hours for tracks 2.2, 1.4, and 2.1. So it's 2.2, 1.4 if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 1.4 and 2.1. 1.4 and 2.1. So now I divide by the limiting factor per unit so that I get to the contribution per limiting factor, which is contribution per machine hour, so that I can rank my products according to the limiting factor, or the product that makes the higher profit per limiting factor, which is per machine hour. Let me first look at the contribution per unit. If you look at the contribution per unit, we're 52, 77, 56, and 63. And if you were doing your ranking according to the contribution per unit, because you might be like, why can't we rank using the contribution per unit? Because this can cheat you sometimes. Yeah, this will be ranked number 1 because 77 is the highest. 63 will be ranked number 2. 56 will be ranked number 3. And this will be ranked number 4. If you were ranking by mistake using the contribution per unit. But when we rank according to the limiting factor, or the contribution per limiting factor. So now here we will get to the contribution per limiting factor, meaning contribution per machine hour. So this will be a contribution per machine hour. Let us look at our contribution now per machine hour. If will they change? 52 divided by 2, we get 26. This is contribution per machine hour, meaning 26 rand per machine hour. We want the one that makes the highest profit per machine hour, because machine hour is our limiting factor. 77 divided by 2.2, we get 35. So far it is still number 1. 56 divided by 1.4, we get 40. Now we can say now things start changing. Then tractors are no longer now ranked number 1. Then we have 63 divided by 2.1, which is 30. So now we can see now that things are changing. Our rankings, they start, let me say rankings. Rankings, the first rank will be, this will be rank number 1, rank number 2, rank number 3, rank number 4. So these are the correct rankings. When we start doing the production, we will produce our products based on our rankings. So the minute now you have calculated your contribution per limiting factor, meaning after you have divided by the limiting factor per unit, you get to the contribution per limiting factor. And the minute you get that, then now you can proceed further by now allocating the hours, which is the limited resource, using the rankings, meaning first allocating the hours on this product. This will be number 2, this will be number 3, this will be number 4. Therefore, now we are still proceeding with the second requirement. Then in the second requirement now, we are doing the allocation. Allocation of hours based on rankings. Allocation of hours based on rankings. Now we need to know how many hours are available. Available hours for all products. The hours that are available, it is 6,800 hours. Then we need to allocate these hours according to our rankings. Allocate the hours first to the product that is ranked number 1, which is our trains. Our trains are ranked as number 1. Now we start by saying how many hours do our trains want. Our trains require 1,960 hours. So now we say allocation. We are now allocating according to our rankings. Allocation to trains. And how many units do we want to manufacture for trains? 1.4 times by 1.2. 1,400 times that by 1.4. We don't have to repeat this calculation because we have done it previously. 1,960 is the total. You can just write that total as it is 1,960. And now the question is, do we have available hours in our disposal? Yes, we still have 6,000 available. So now we can be able to take that 1,960. So we have 6,800 minus 1,600 and 1,960. So we get 4,840. We said 6,800, just to confirm, 6,800 minus 1,960, it is 4,840. Therefore, now this is available. This is available for the remaining product. This is available for the remaining products. So now if this is what is available for the remaining products, then now we can allocate to the product that was ranked second. The product that was ranked second was 3 tractors. Product that was ranked second per limiting factor, meaning machine hours, is tractors. Then we say allocation to tractors. Allocation to tractors. How many hours does tractors require? 2,640. That's what the tractors require. These are the tractors, 2,640. 2,640. So now we close and withdraw the line. Then after closing and drawing the line, then the remainder will be available for the remaining products. This is available. Available for the remaining products. Then we need to know how much is available for the remaining products. Minus 2,640 is what is available for the remaining products. It's 2,200 hours. Remember, these are the hours, not units. We are dealing with the hours here. Then after we say now we need to do allocation to the third product. Allocation to product. What is the product ranked third? It is cars. Allocated or available or allocated to product cars. Then we say how many hours are needed by the product cars. hours is 1,680. Do we have 1,000 available 680? 1,680. Yes, we do have 2,200 is still more than what we want. So now we can take those hours, 2,200 minus 1,680. This leaves us with 520 hours. Then now we have available for product trucks. So now this is the product that was ranked last, which is the trucks. Then the question is, how many hours does the product trucks requires? Product truck requires 2,000 hours. How many hours are available? Only 520. Then the question is, how many units can be manufactured out of the available hours? Because we know that when it comes to the first product, just to analyze it for you, the first product will manufacture, which is trains, will manufacture all the units they wanted because we have all the hours. Second product will manufacture all their units because we are maximizing all their hours. Third product, which is cars, will manufacture all their units because the hours that were available were more than what was required in terms of cars. But when it comes to the trucks, we only have 520. Then the question is, how many units can be manufactured out of the 520? Then now we say cars produced. It will be 520 divided by the required hours per unit. We say 520 divide that by the required hours per unit. Our trucks, it's not cars in fact, our trucks produced, not cars, our trucks produced, how many trucks can be produced out of the available hours? We need 2 hours to complete 1 unit of a truck. Therefore now we divide by 2 hours. When we divide by 2 hours, then we'll get to know how many units can be manufactured out of these hours. So now, meaning they can only manufacture 260 units. So now for all other products, they will be manufactured up to their demand. But for trucks, we can only manufacture 260 units of trucks because we are not making enough profit when it comes to trucks per limiting factor. We are only making 26 Rand per unit, but all other products, they are making more money. So now other products that are making more money, we needed to manufacture all of them, but manufacture less of the product that is not making too much profit per our limiting factor. So now, meaning we will only manufacture according to the limited resources. Make sure that at the end, when you get to this number of hours, you divide this by the required hours in order for us to know how many units need to be manufactured out of the available remaining 520 hours to manufacture trucks. So now we have responded to the second requirement, and the third part now is then to respond to the third question. The third question said that calculate the maximum product or maximum profit that will be achieved from the production mix in part B above. So now we need to calculate now the maximum profit. So calculating the maximum profit, remember our maximum profit is based on the units that the company is going to be able to manufacture, taking into consideration the limiting factor. So now the number of units that can be manufactured, then we say now under number C, maximum profit. Maximum profit. We start with the trucks. When it comes to the trucks, we have a contribution per unit now. Remember, we come to the contribution per unit, no longer contribution per limiting factor. Contribution per unit is 52 rand. So we say 52 rand times that by the units. 52 times this by 260 units. Then after the trucks we have let me just confirm, the tractors is 1.2 units. Then we go to the tractors. Then we need to check the contribution per unit of the tractors. Contribution of the tractors, it is 77 rand. Then we say 77 rand times this by 77 times by the number of units, which is 1,200 units. Let me confirm that. Yes, tractors, we expect to manufacture all that 1,200 because we do have the available hours. There we are the tractors, we took all the hours that were available. Therefore now all are required. Then we go to the third one, and these are the units. Then we go to trains. And remember, we expected to manufacture everything regarding the trains, and the contribution per unit of the trains is 56 rand. So now we say 56 rand times this by the number of units of the trains, and the number of units of the trains is 1.4. There the number of the units 1.4. We are calculating the maximum profit. Multiply by 1.4 units. Then now we come to cars. How many units we wanted to manufacture regarding cars? All the 800. The only one that we only manufactured less was the trucks, which was 260, remember. The cars, all the 800 cars will be manufactured at the given contribution. 800 units. 800 units. And the contribution of the cars was 63 rand. Then we multiply here by 63 rand. Therefore now we determine the profit, the maximum profit. We determine the maximum profit. 260 times by 52, it is 13,520. 77 times by 1,200, it is 92,400. 56 times by 1,200, it is 78,400. Then 63 times by 800, we get 50,400. So the maximum profit will be this amount plus 78,400 plus 92,400 plus 13,520. So the maximum profit will be 234,720. This will be the maximum profit. Let me just confirm the first one. 52 times by 260, 13,520. Yes. So this will be in response now to the last question, how much will be the maximum profit if then now the company is considering the limiting factor. Now let me then check if is perhaps there any other part of the question that is not answered. Now it said calculate, let me check if is there any other requirement. Okay, that's all. Calculate the maximum profit that will be achieved from the production mix in part B above, and we have just multiplied the units and we multiplied that by the contribution. And after we have multiplied by the contribution, and I want to just caution you now, that profit, remember, it is a total profit, and it is before we have taken into account the fixed cost, because we know that contribution, it is sales minus variable cost, and we had our fixed cost per unit here, and here they were per unit, and also they were per unit throughout. And in total, our fixed administration cost in total were 25,000 and 50,000. So now in the calculation of the maximum profit, and we have now to say this is our maximum contribution, in fact, then we have to say less fixed cost, and our fixed cost will be 75,000 rands. Then when we deduct, then we get to really what we call maximum profit. Just one aspect that I almost forgot. So they said the maximum profit. Just to give an insight on this question, sometimes they can say a maximum contribution. When they say a maximum contribution, therefore now it means you only take into account the contribution as I did. So in this case, I had my contributions. Remember, these were the contributions. These were the contributions per unit. So now the minute they say calculate the maximum contribution, you only multiply by the contribution and you stop. But if it's the maximum profit, then it will be the contribution minus the fixed cost. Because contribution does not have fixed cost, it's only variable cost. So now we deduct our fixed cost, which are highlighted to us to be a total of 25,000 and 50,000. And that came up to 75,000. Less fixed cost of 75,000. And I want again to bring your attention to the fact that sometimes I will just prefer the shortcut approach. We have fixed cost and they are divided into two. We have fixed overheads of 25,000. We have administrative fixed cost and overheads 50,000. They are divided into admin 25,000, and our fixed overheads are 50,000. Please make sure that you show all these calculations in details. Then our maximum profit will then be the net. Then we have 234,720 minus 75,000, and this gives us 159,720. So this becomes the maximum profit. If you were required to calculate the maximum contribution, this is where you are going to stop. So this wouldn't have been a problem. And just another shortcut that I just want to check if it is working. If it doesn't work, then there's no problem. We already do have our profit per unit, and our profit per unit was given to be these figures, and these figures were under the assumption that the company will manufacture the given units, which is the units that they anticipated to manufacture. So now when we take the profit of 22 and 35 and 21 and 20, we multiply by the given units, or the unit that we calculated based on the limiting factor. I don't think that will give us exactly the same amount. But you can do that test at your time if you want, just to prove if you multiply by the 22 rand, 35, 21 and 20, if does it give you the same maximum profit, but I don't think it will be so. So now with that being said, let me say, guys, thank you. I hope you have learned something in this exercise, and let me leave you in that and say, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get updates of the latest videos and latest information and latest updates at all times. So let me say thank you. God bless you.